from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Setting sail. An aid ship carrying 200 tonnes of food aid leaves Cyprus for Gaza after days of delays. More than 400 people waiting for aid have now been killed by Israeli forces. The latest attack killed at least 7 people in Gaza City. Ukraine launches its biggest drone attack on Russia in months, hitting one of the country's biggest oil refineries. Meanwhile, Moscow says it's beaten back a cross-border attack by Ukraine-based forces in 2 regions.
And we're in Lausanne, Switzerland, to find out why there's a growing number of Chinese students attending the world's top-ranked hospitality business school.
The first aid ship carrying almost 200 tonnes of food to Gaza has set sail from the port of Larnaca in Cyprus. It's part of a pilot scheme to open a new sea aid route to the enclave, where the United Nations says that more than 500,000 people are on the brink of famine. Health authorities in Gaza say the death toll from the conflict has now passed 31,000 people since Hamas launched its attack on Israel on October the 7th. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Evangelos Tsipsas, who's in Larnaca. So, Evangelos, how is this sea aid route going to work?
Well, as you mentioned, finally, the ship that's been here and behind me in the port of Larnaca for the past 3 weeks, filled with humanitarian aid, has set sail. It's now in the open waters, close to international waters, actually sailing towards the Gaza Strip to deliver the so much needed humanitarian aid. Now, how this will work? The ship from the Open Arms that has a floating jetty behind it. If you guys can see also on the drone footage that we filmed, you can see that that floating jetty is attached beside that vessel from the Open Arms. And the initial trip that is supposed to take about 15 hours because of the load, which is so heavy, it's possible that it's going to take up to 24 to 48 hours to arrive to its final destination. Now, once it gets there, because that offshore pier from the United States government has not yet been constructed, the World Central Kitchen has now building its own with rubble from the buildings that have been destroyed and a number of other materials that they're using to be able to put something as fast as they can so they can offload the humanitarian aid to be able to deliver to the people who are so much in need. Now, if this project, this pilot project does succeed, and it does land, and the people who need it get the humanitarian aid, then we'll be talking about a successful pilot project that could continue to keep running for the next few weeks.
So that aid are now on the way, but there are warnings, aren't there, that this can't be the only aid route into Gaza?
Correct, yeah. Besides the maritime corridor that has been established, even if it's successful, along with the airdrops from the United States and other governments that have been delivering humanitarian aid by air to the people in Gaza. The head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said that it will help, but it's not going to solve the crisis. And the reason it's not going to solve the crisis is because there needs to be a ceasefire in order for the people to get what they need and to be able to continue with the next day. Let's have a listen.
The situation on the ground is more dramatic than ever, and it has reached a tipping point. We have all seen the reports of children dying of starvation. This cannot be, and we must do all in our power to stop it. Everybody knows how difficult it is to move aid into and within Gaza. All routes have to be used to reach people in need. And this is where the maritime corridor comes into play.
And that's what the European Commission head, Ursula von der Leyen, is trying to avoid, a catastrophe that will happen there in the Gaza Strip if the aid is not distributed. Now, besides the humanitarian aid that is going to be traveling from here, the U.S. has announced that it's building another pier to collect more humanitarian aid. But again, this all needs to be in place as soon as possible because the people who are in Gaza at the moment really need this aid. But it won't happen, as the head of the Commission said, if there's not a ceasefire.
Evangelo, thank you. Now, correspondent Evangelos Tsipsas in Larnaca. Well, let's go to Gaza now and talk to our correspondent there, Akram Al-Sassari. Akram, tell us about these reports of more people being killed while waiting to collect aid in Gaza City.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, the bombardment continues all over the Gaza Strip, not only in the Gaza City. The bombardment is continuous in Rahamat City, which is part of Khan Yunis City. The bombardment is continuous in Rafah, where we are now. The bombardment is continuous in the Gaza very north and Gaza very south at the very same time. There were reports from Khan Yunis about 11 people being retrieved from under the rubble from houses that were targeted, and the people were killed. It took, according to the Palestinian sources, those people were killed a few days ago, and the attempts to retrieve some more bodies are still underway. The magnitude of the bombardment has been steady for the last few days, and the areas where the bombardment is taking place also are almost the same. Hamad in Khan Yunis City, Abasan in Khan Yunis City, Beit Lahia in Gaza very north, and Rafah and Khan Yunis in the very south of the Gaza Strip. So the number of people who are injured and killed is increasing also, increasing by the hour. More than 31,000 Palestinians are already killed, more than 72,000 are already injured, and more houses are destroyed every day. The number of houses that are destroyed every day, according to the Palestinian sources, is increasing 10 or even 20 houses by the 1 hour. So you can do the calculation, and it is a very big and ever-increasing campaign that has been causing that widespread destruction and loss of life within the Gaza Strip.
And Akram, the holy month of Ramadan is now underway. How is the situation developing?
Well, a humanitarian crisis that has been deepening, that has been affecting all aspects of life. People in Gaza have living by whatever is available, and whatever is available is already depleting, not only in the Gaza North, but also in the Gaza South. Very limited supplies entering the Gaza Strip. Calls have been made by international figures such as the UN figures and local figures such as the Ministry of Social Development that has been struggling to address the need of the population. In Rafah, we have around 1.2 million Gazans who need daily food and who would welcome the holy month of Ramadan and have some special rituals to receive that month. Unfortunately, they cannot do those rituals. They cannot prepare the food that they were used to prepare because of the lack to the food supplies and water. Water is an issue, and in the background you can see people gathering there for the sake of fetching some water, some decent water for their family, drinkable for their family. The health diseases increasing in the Gaza Strip. Around 700,000 Gazans have already developed hepatitis A, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, and according to 1 million Gazans, including those 700,000, have developed another respiratory diseases, another symptoms of fatigue and of exhaustion and starvation. People in Gaza lost an average of 10 to 12 kilograms, and that suffering continues. The humanitarian situation that is lived by the Gazan has been described by the different international organizations and spokespersons of those organizations, but I think words are falling short of describing the reality of the situation in Gaza. No food, no water, large-scale destruction, and large-scale death engulfing the whole area.
Akram, thank you very much. Our correspondent Akram Al-Sassari in Gaza. Well, let's go to Jerusalem now and talk to our correspondent there, Sarah Coates. Sarah, away from Gaza, first of all, Israel's launched a raid on the West Bank city of Jenin.
Certainly, this is just the latest raid, and this is something that we've basically been seeing on a daily basis since October 7. This one, as you mentioned, in Jenin. We do understand, according to the Israeli military, that they have arrested a Palestinian Islamic Jihad member. This is Mehdi Fiad. He is a man of suspected of a number of shooting attacks. Now, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent and a number of other sources on the ground, undercover Israeli troops backed by the military, they surrounded a number of homes with very, very loud explosions heard. It is also important to point out that over the last day, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he is ordering the prisons here in Israel to prepare for thousands more inmates. Many of these could be being held under administrative detention, which means they are being held without charge and without trial, with aid group sources on the ground, rights groups saying that since October 7, 7,500 Palestinians have been arrested in the West Bank.
And on Israel's northern border, there have been more cross-border strikes between Israel and Lebanon in the past few hours.
Certainly a major escalation as we go to where incoming rocket alert sirens are ringing out in these northern border towns in Israel. Just a little earlier, the IDF struck a number of rocket launches in Beit Izbil, that is a southern city in Lebanon, very close to the Israeli border, also an area that suffered a fair bit of destruction during the 2006 Lebanon war. The military's also been striking fairly deep inside Lebanon in Baalbek, which is on the Syria-Lebanon border. Some pictures coming from the scene show major destruction. Apparently this is where 2 Hezbollah command centres were hit, and this all comes as around 100 rockets were fired in 2 separate incidents into northern Israel today. Hezbollah claiming those rockets, saying that they were targeting IDF bases and other military infrastructure. So this is, of course, very, very concerning, especially given reports that Israel has given Hezbollah a deadline of the 15th of this month to move its fighters away from the blue line through diplomatic means. And if this fails, Israel is potentially considering launching a full-scale war, which is certainly something nobody wants.
Sarah, thank you very much. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Jerusalem. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Ukraine launches massive drone attacks in Russia as Moscow claims victory over paramilitary groups crossing into its territory.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Setting sail. An aid ship carrying 200 tons of food aid leaves Cyprus for Gaza after days of delays. And more than 400 people waiting for aid have now been killed by Israeli forces. The latest attack killed at least 7 people in Gaza City. A massive wave of Ukrainian drone attacks has caused fires at Russian fuel facilities, according to authorities there. 2 oil facilities in the Oryol and Nizhny Novgorod regions reported fires, while a power grid was also targeted. Russia's defense ministry said it intercepted at least 26 drones in at least 7 regions, including Moscow. Meanwhile, Russian anti-Kremlin paramilitary groups based in Ukraine say they've been fighting government forces in Russia. Moscow says more than 100 enemy soldiers have been killed during incursions and claims that they were Ukrainian. Well, let's go to Moscow now and talk to our correspondent there, Dasha Chernyshova. Dasha, what's the Kremlin saying about the drone attacks and these alleged incursions by Russian anti-Kremlin groups?
Well, indeed, we have seen a wave of drone attacks against the Russian territory by Ukraine. We've heard the Russian Ministry of Defense confirming earlier this morning that at least 25 Ukrainian drones have been intercepted, but many more attacks have been reported after that. We understand that oil refineries have been damaged in the area, and in Nizhny Novgorod, the fire there has been localized, but obviously, while Ariel is located close to the Ukrainian border, about 150 kilometers, there are concerns about the strikes deeper into the Russian territory, like in Nizhny Novgorod, which is about 1,000 kilometers away from the border with Ukraine. We understand that the fire has been localized there and the situation has stabilized, but more drones have been reported in the Voronezh, in Taganrog region, as well as in Moscow region, where a drone attempted to reach the Russian capital overnight. We understand that the Russian air defense systems have been able to intercept most of them, but in Belgorod region, which borders Ukraine, for instance, we've heard about more drone attacks as well as Tochka-U strikes by the Ukrainian military carried out against the buildings of administration, for instance. As a result of that, at least 8 people have been injured, according to local authorities, as well as against the shopping mall, where a drone has crashed onto the roof of that shopping mall. So certainly there has been a wave. We also have heard from the Russian Ministry of Defense that the Ukrainian forces have attempted to penetrate the Russian Federation by crossing the border on 3 directions in the Kursk and Belgorod region during the fighting with the Russian military. Moscow says at least 60 Ukrainian fighters have been destroyed. The incursion has failed and the border of the Russian Federation has not been crossed.
And we're hearing that a Russian military transport plane has crashed. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's right. We have the confirmation from the Russian Ministry of Defense that in the Ivanovo region, Il-76, the military transport plane, has crashed. We understand that there were 8 crew members and 7 passengers on board. The rescue operation, the search and rescue operation, has concluded. We understand from the governor of the Orenburg region that those were the pilots from Orenburg. Obviously, there have been condolences to the families of those pilots. But yet another somber reminder that the lives of people are in danger all the time. This plane has crashed into the cemetery, causing no damage on the ground.
Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, thank you very much. Well, let's go to Kyiv now and talk to our correspondent there, Megumi Lim. So, Megumi, what's Kyiv saying about these drone attacks and these alleged incursions?
Well, Ukraine's military intelligence spokesman Andriy Yusov has commented on these incursions, and he has confirmed that these are Russian citizens fighting for Ukraine's security and defense forces. And so far, we're seeing 3 different groups claiming that they have made an incursion across the Russian border into Russia. The Freedom of Russia Legion, the Siberian Battalion, and the Russian Volunteer Corps. Now, what I understand is that these 2 groups, the Freedom of Russian Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps, are both made up of volunteer soldiers, but the Siberian Battalion is officially part of Ukraine's armed forces, and I have met with some of the members of the Siberian Battalion. I've covered their training, and they have said that many of them have had to move to 3rd countries before entering Ukraine, and they believe that the Putin regime needs to be toppled, therefore that they're fighting on the Ukrainian side. But what is unclear is that whether or not they are acting under the orders of the Ukrainian armed forces. But from what Yusov, the military intelligence spokesman, said, it appears that they are acting independently of Ukraine according to him, he said that when they're at home, which by saying home, he's referring to Russia, he said that they have the right to do whatever they think is necessary to protect their civil rights and free their country from, in his words, Putin's dictatorship. Now, this is not the first time an incursion has happened. The Freedom of Russian Legion has crossed into Russia's Belgorod region in May of last year. And at the time, Yusov also commented on this incursion, saying that the aim was to liberate these territories from Putin's regime and push back the enemy to create a certain safe zone to protect Ukrainian civilians. But now what we understand is that because the Russian presidential elections are coming up in a few days and the incursion has happened ahead of that, we've seen the objective being different from the one that happened in May of last year. We've seen a member of the Siberian Battalion post videos encouraging Russian citizens to ignore the upcoming elections. So it appears that the objective is different this time around.
And Megumi, we've heard from President Zelensky, who said that the Russian advance has been halted. What can you tell us?
That's right. Zelensky said that Russian forces advance has stopped, especially in the eastern frontline areas. But this is, I believe that what he means is that the advance has slowed down, because we are seeing, according to Russia's defense ministry, that although Kiev has not confirmed this, that Russian forces has taken another settlement in the Nevelsk, the town of Nevelsk, southwest of Avdiivka. So I think he means that the frontline situation may have stabilized since Russian forces have begun to make more advances since they took the town of Avdiivka last month. But he also said the situation could change if weapons and ammunition deliveries don't arrive from Ukraine's Western partners on time. So the situation remains very fragile indeed.
Megumi, thank you very much. Our correspondent Megumi Lim in Kyiv. The Prime Minister of Haiti has agreed to resign as violence there has spiraled. Ariel Henry made the announcement after a meeting of regional leaders in Jamaica, saying he'll step down as soon as a transitional council is installed. Our correspondent Rahul Pathak reports.
A country threatening to tear itself apart. In Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, armed groups have taken control of the city as the impoverished Caribbean country teeters on the brink of civil war. The worsening situation forced Haiti's unelected Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, to announce his resignation.
After the Council of Ministers, it's been agreed to set up a presidential transitional council. Once chosen, the council will govern over different sectors of national life. I'm asking all Haitians to remain calm and do everything they can for peace and stability, to come back as fast as possible for the good of the country.
The move comes after talks with regional Caribbean leaders who are currently meeting in Jamaica. Ariel Henry had been in power since July 2021, following the assassination of Haiti's last president. The 74-year-old claiming he was only leading the country on an interim basis. However, he had repeatedly postponed promised elections, claiming the security situation in the country needed to improve. The violence in Haiti escalated last week after Henry said general elections wouldn't take place until 2025 during a visit to Guyana. A government-declared state of emergency and nighttime curfew were ignored as armed gangs attacked police stations and released prisoners. One of the Haitian gang leaders warning of dire consequences if immediate elections weren't held.
We don't want to give you lies. We're not in a peaceful revolution. We're making a bloody revolution in the country because this system is an apartheid system, a wicked system. Woe betide anyone who hides a politician who collaborates with Ariel Henry in their hotels.
The gangs have now got their wish with the resignation of Henry, but the violence looks set to continue for some time yet. Rahul Pathak, CGTN.
The hospitality sector is expected to grow strongly over the coming years, and Switzerland is home to the world's top school, teaching the skills needed to work in the industry. It's seeing an increasing number of Chinese students learning how to deliver world-class service. Our correspondent Catherine Drew reports.
Founded in 1893 on the wave of a tourism boom in the Swiss Alps, Today, EHL has held the #1 university ranking for a hospitality business school for the past 5 years. With a strict dress code, students here are schooled in multiple disciplines, including culinary and service skills, event planning and entrepreneurship.
When we are talking about management, you need to understand the basics, stewards with housekeeping, events or catering. You need to know the basics to be able to understand, because for me the most difficult job in the world is to manage people, and you need to learn this slowly by slowly.
The students are being prepared for an industry which was badly impacted by COVID-19, but which has bounced back.
Profitability is back big time. Most hospitality operations are more profitable than they have been in 2019. I would say the biggest challenge is talent shortage. We need talent in operations, and companies need to learn how to attract talent and then how to keep them.
Since 2019, there's been a 50% increase in the number of Chinese students coming to study at the EHL here in Lausanne. Currently, there are around 600 students, meaning the country makes up the 3rd largest student body behind Switzerland and France.
Perfect. Try to get a bit of speed.
Shaking up his career prospects is 18-year-old Ryan Lau from Hong Kong. Just a few weeks into a bachelor's degree in hospitality, Ryan is still settling in.
It's amazing. Everyone's really nice, the atmosphere and the vibe is all really nice, and you get to do a lot. Like, it's very different from a usual university where you study the same thing for 1 year, whereas here you get to do different things every week, every 2 weeks, and it's just lots of fun.
With fees running at over $200,000 across a 4-year bachelor's degree, EHL is out of reach for many aspiring hospitality students. But it is seeking to expand, with EHL forming partnerships to deliver its training in China, where 3 schools have been certified. It's currently in the process of working with a local partner in Sanya to offer its bachelor's program. Skills that are in demand.
In China, as you know, we have really high quality infrastructure, facilities like hotels, but we are lacking is still service, service management, or maybe after-sales service culture, making sure that we can attract international travelers, not because China is huge, not because we have a long history, but because we can provide, world-class services for these people.
And it's these skills that student Ryan Lau believes will set him apart when he returns home. Catherine Drew, CGTN, Lausanne, Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly.
The headlines again. Setting sail. An aid ship carrying 200 tons of food aid leaves Cyprus for Gaza after days of delays. More than 400 people waiting for aid have now been killed by Israeli forces. The latest attack killed at least 7 people in Gaza City. And Ukraine launches its biggest drone attack on Russia in months, hitting one of the country's biggest oil refineries. And that is the world today. Thanks for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.